to my sewing room. Today we have a really exciting show for you. Some of you might be thinking, well, Martha, I love heirloom sewing, but isn't it really expensive? Well, the answer is that it can be, but the good news is it does not have to be. And today, the theme of the show is French sewing on a budget. Now, to share with you a few beautiful garments showing you how French sewing can be done on a budget, this little dress has a magnificent lace-shaped collar stitched down with Madeira applique stitch using a 100 regular needle rather than a wing needle. And as you can see, moving down the little dress, except for the little sashes, which aren't very expensive, the dress is absolutely plain. It has no more expensive treatment. This is a beautiful little drop-waisted midi dress with a treatment on one side. And by the way, this is French lace and Entredeux around the neckline, but this is a beautiful piece of American batiste and American eyelet with the ribbon run through it. It's much less expensive. Here is another very inexpensive dress using the poly cotton batiste with some really pretty embroidery on it. And that really doesn't cost anything, but of course it costs your most precious thing, your time. This is a dress also made out of a very inexpensive fabric. It has some beautiful laces on it, on the round puffing collar. But if you can see the rest of the dress, well, actually it goes down here and it even has some tucks. But tucks don't cost anything, just a little of your time. A sweet, sweet little baby dress with a little bit of French lace, a tiny little one piece of Swiss eyelet, and the fabric is a imperial broadcloth, which is not very expensive. And this is one of my favorite blouses in the whole world. It is made out of the Swiss batiste, the Nylona, but if you'll look real carefully, all of the trim is simply double needle pin tucks, wing needle Entredeux, double needle pin tucks, and then wing needle Entredeux on the outside. All of this beautiful blouse is simply trimmed. It does not have any laces at all on it. Come on over with me to the technique boards and we'll study a little bit more about French sewing on a budget. Let's have a little fun and see how easy it is to make your French sewing on a budget. This is a comparison of budget fabric and trims to Swiss and English fabric and trims. This fabric is the Nylona, the Swiss batiste called Nylona, and it sells for $26 a yard. Now granted, it will be just as beautiful 200 years from now as it is today, but still $26 a yard is pretty expensive. Now the imperial batiste or the poly cotton batiste is about $5 a yard. Now it does not hold the test of time the way the Swiss batiste does, but then again, there's a difference between $5 and $26 a yard. Now here's where we're going to have some fun. This is a French lace. It is gorgeous. It will last 200 years. Also, it costs $3.26 a yard. It is 100% cotton. Now let's not really go down to nylon. I don't want to use nylon laces. What I'd like to do here is to still use a French lace, but find one of a less expensive pattern. This one costs $1.60 a yard. Quite a difference and still just as beautiful. Now let's go on to one of our chain stores. This edging, which has one straight side and one scallop side, is heavier. As a matter of fact, it's almost a Cluny lace, but it is still 100% cotton, and it is 74 cents a yard. Let's go back to the edgings. The French edging, matching the one up above it, is $3.40 a yard. Let's move over. We still have French edging again, but this time the pattern is not so expensive, so it's $1.60 a yard. Now going over to the chain stores or the discount stores, I found another cotton edging and it is only 67 cents a yard. Now, are the chain stores edging exactly like the French edgings? No, they are not. Will they do if they're 100% cotton? Of course they will do. Now then, let's look at the embroidered insertion. This embroidered insertion is from Switzerland. It's $7.90 a yard. This embroidered insertion is done on our American machines. This is one that we have embroidered in New Jersey. It's $2 a yard. And let's really have some fun. If you have a wonderful machine with any kind of embroidery stitches, you can make your own, and that costs you almost nothing a yard. Once again, the Swiss embroidered edging is $20 per yard. The American embroidered edging, also 100% cotton, is $2.90 a yard. And then here's another American edging, also 100% cotton, that is $2.80 a yard. Both of these we have embroidered in New Jersey. Let's talk about Entredeux, whatever you want to call it. The Swiss Entredeux is $2.50 a yard. The American is $1.10 a yard. The kind you make yourself, you embroider with your own machine, and that is perfectly gorgeous, cost you nothing other than your machine and the cost of a little bit of fabric. Tatting. This is the Chinese tatting made by hand. It costs $4.40 a yard. Here is some budget store trim, which looks sort of like tatting, that costs 96 cents per yard. Now then, I want to share with you another technique, which is one of my very favorites for elegant machine sewing, whether you're on a budget or you're spending all the money you want to on French lace. These are called folded tucks. Here is a folded tuck, and here is a folded tuck on this pretty little green dress. They are very easy to make. First of all, this is what they look like after they're finished. You see the 1, 2, 3 tucks. These are 1/4 inch tucks. How do you make those tucks? I draw my tuck, my fold line, and then I press right on that fold line. I'll move my fingers along there, kind of mash it in and press that fold in. And then after I press the fold in, see, there's going to be my tuck. This time I'm using my 1/4 inch quilting foot. I'm lining this right up on the side with my 1/4 inch quilting foot, and I'm simply straight stitching using the edge of that quilting foot for a 1/4 inch guide. And I will have beautiful 1/4 inch tucks. And they're really very easy to do because I'm just simply using the quilting foot and I'm stitching along using a straight stitch, I think about a 2.5 length, just a regular stitching length. So I will have the very inexpensive treatment of folded tucks. I am now ready to go and finishing them up. And that is how easy it is to do some techniques for French sewing on a budget. And now I have a lovely lavender and lace little girl's dress for you. The dress for this series is a wonderful little princess waist dress. This dress is our French sewing on a budget dress. As you can see, there are just really pretty curved pin tucks along the bodice. Also, there is wing needle entredeux and then hand embroidery, but you could do that by machine if you wanted to. The treatment on the skirt is absolutely wonderful. It has a really neat folded up skirt, hemmed in with hem stitching, 3 curved pin tucks, and then the little embroidery. Let's see how you make this dress. First of all, you're going to trace off your a middle design for your wing needle entredeux before you ever trace your bodice on your fabric. Then these lines are for the turnaround pin tucks. Step number 2 is to come in here and do your wing needle entredeux in the scallops. Then move on over and do your triple curved pin tucks following the scallop lines too, and then you trace off your dress bodice. You know why you have to do that last? Because you have to be sure that you have enough fabric when it kind of scrunches it up with the double needle pin tucks. This is my favorite hem in the whole world. Okay, take your regular hem, fold it up, then do wing needle entredeux along a line you have drawn, and then come in and trim it away. Talk about easy. Here is the hem on the bottom here. With the entredeux that hems up your hem, trim it away, and then put 3 double needle pin tucks. The sleeves are really sweet also. Just do the scalloped wing needle entredeux, and then do your triple pin tucks coming up and around and up and around. Speaking of those triple pin tucks, some people think those are so hard to do, and they're really not. So let me just show you how easy they are to do. First of all, I'm going to use a 1.6 or 2.0 double needle. I'm going to have my needle in needle down position, and I'm going to use a short stitch length. I'm using a 1.5 stitch length, and if you have a pin tuck foot, great. I do have a pin tuck foot right here. It has little grooves in it, but if you don't have a pin tuck foot, just use a regular zigzag foot. The other thing I have to do is draw these turnaround lines right there. Now then, I'm going to stitch along that curve. I'm going to come up here until my double needles straddle. I'm going to, let's see, come on over one more stitch, maybe even one more. Okay, my double needle straddle the line. I'm going to lift my presser foot and twist, and the needles, by the way, are down in the fabric. What, Martha? You mean to say you have those needles in the fabric? You're going to have a terrible pucker there. No, I'm not. You just watch. And then I'm going to twist it and just keep right on sewing, guiding the edge of the pin tuck foot along that scalloped Entredeux stitch. Go right around there. This is the easy part. Turning around, people think isn't too easy. Now then, just to show you what we have there, I'm going to pull it out and show you. Do you see that perfect turnaround pin tuck? Absolutely perfect, and all I did was what you just saw. Now I have my friend Beverly Sheldrick, who is going to teach you a beautiful silk ribbon embroidery stitch called Lavender. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today my friend Beverly Sheldrick from New Zealand. Beverly is a needlework artist and has authored the book Colonial Inspirations. She also is a regular columnist and contributor to So Beautiful and Fancy Work magazines. Beverly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. It's lovely to be with you. Martha, today I would like to show your viewers a very pretty stitch. That's the flower Lavender. And we're going to show you first of all the stitch and then a little project to use it on. Now I would like to show you, it's very simple. We start with 2 French knots here. We then put another 2 French knots on top of these 2, and then a 3rd pair of French knots on top of these 4. We now have 6 knots here. We're then going to take a slightly lighter colour and we're going to do 3 split stitches at slightly different angles, just like that. And we have a completed one here with the greenery showing like that. So I'm just going to show you very quickly. You will see that I have already done the 6 little French knots there, making the little clump there. We're then going to have a split stitch. Remember, just lie it on the ground there, don't have it too tight, and put them at just random angles, like so. And then the last one coming up through the middle like this. And of course, if you're doing a clump of them, try to have the angle slightly different from the others so that they're not all looking exactly the same. And then it's just a perfectly straight stitch with our thread. I've just used an embroidery floss here, like so. Now the project that we have for you today is a little book carrier. You can see there's a clump of lavenders that are across here. You'll see there are zips that go all the way round like this, and we open it up and we have inside a zippered pocket here and another zippered pocket here. So here we go, we'll make it. We have, first of all, this is the back section, and you will see how I have quilted it on a diagonal pattern like that. You will also see that I have inside, I have put a heavy duty fusing on both the back piece and the inner piece like that. They're quilted together. On the front, I have put the design using a marker pen, and that's just on one piece of fusing. So the piece that goes underneath there is perfectly plain, and then they'll be stitched together. That gives us the front. And we also have our 2 inner sections which have the zips, and you can see that one zip goes each way like that. One that way, one this way. Then we also have to make the piece that goes in between. And I've taken a piece of fabric here which is stitched together, and then I've put some top stitching on it to make it very strong. It too is fused, as is this piece, which is, this goes like that in the centre, folded over, stitched across, and then joined to the centre, and I'll show you that right now. You will see that we have, I've got 2 very long zips which have been centred. I've then put a piece on top, the zip, and then the other piece, and then now stitched together like that. If you have any extra on the end, just take your scissors and chop it off. It's then opened out, and you'll see here I've brought it back and I've stitched it so that it's now sitting firmly. We now have something which is going to look like this. You will now see that I have taken these pieces. I have got this, our zippered section. I have then put the handle, and then I have split this piece that I used here, split it in half. I put one piece on top and one on the bottom like that, and they're stitched across very firmly, taken like that, and you will do the same thing to the other end. We now have our front section, which I have done the embroidery on, and I've put them all together. There's my zippered section, and I'm going to stitch them together all the way round like that, so we now have a little sandwich. We then take one of the pieces and we're going to put this gusset, for want of a better word, like that. Start centering it here, and you will see how I've put it in quarters like this, and I've just pinned it for myself there to make it easy. I've established where the corners are going to be, and you will see I've just got some little nicks that go down to this row of stitching there. Those will then be, I like to stitch all those together first of all, and then I take a piece of binding which I've folded in half. This is cut on the bars. This will then be stitched on top like that, and if you put that on the underneath, you can then go like that, and then this is turned over like this.
Beverly, that is fascinating.
And stitched down.
What a lovely book cover. And now I have a home decorating project for you. This is the perfect gift for everyone on your gift list. It's a project called Cash by the Yard. This one is has little trucks and trains and fire engines on it. Let me just show you how fun this is. It says pull here. So what am I going to do? I'm going to pull, and oh my goodness, here comes a $5 bill, another $5 bill, and I'm going to keep on pulling, and you can put real money. This is play money. And then you might want to do one. Here, let me show you how you write on this. It says pull here when you pull it out of the little hole. We hope you have a very, very, very extremely happy birthday. Keep pulling. Isn't this fun? Pull more. We love you a lot. Hugs and kisses. And then you start the cash, whatever you want to be on there. Another version is a French sewn version. Pull here. We hope you have a very, very happy birthday. And you keep on pulling. You put whatever gifts in there you want to. Now, how easy is this to make? Well, you just won't believe it. Start with a toilet tissue base, the cardboard base. Just simply wrap some fabric around it. Tie one end, tie the other end, and then cut a little slit anywhere you want to put your cash in there, and write whatever you want, and then put it down in there so they can pull it out and enjoy receiving a little green stuff, which always fits, I might add. Next, I have an antique technique for you. This magnificent antique dress has two techniques I'd like to share with you. If you'll look at the top, you'll see how pretty it is with the edging and the insertion. Now then, really close up here, the Entredeux uses the seam allowance rather than trimming it all away. That's one of the techniques I want to share with you. Now look how pretty the bodice is. It has puffing attached to lace. That is very, very unusual to see puffing attached to lace. Usually it is attached to Entredeux. And then once again on the waistband, here is the Entredeux using the seam allowance, and down here is another case of the Entredeux leaving the seam allowance on. Now I'm going to come over here to the sewing machine and show you how easy it is to do both of those techniques. The first one was puffing attached to lace, and I already have the sewing machine set up ready to go on this one. I used the technique where I rolled and whipped over a piece of quilting thread or dental floss, and then I'm going to simply butt up my laces, and I'm going to zigzag those together, and that is the way that you attach puffing to flat lace. And again, that's a very unusual technique. Usually puffing is attached to something a little bit stronger than flat lace, but in this case it's attached to flat lace. All right, here we go. Puffing attached to flat lace like on the antique dress. Now then, the next technique, which I really think is pretty, is Entredeux, leaving a little bit of the seam allowance. You see there's the Entredeux, and the seam allowance is a little bit is left in there, and then the lace is attached to that. I just think that's a beautiful treatment also. This, we're going to use the extra stable lace treatment on this. All right, here is the Entredeux with this built-in seam allowance. I'm going to bring the lace in, lay it down, about halfway in, and I'm going to straight stitch. I want to straight stitch along. Hang on just a minute. All right, I'm going to straight stitch it down, line it up right on the foot, and I'm going to straight stitch the lace down to the seam allowance of the Entredeux. And this is called extra stable Entredeux and lace finish. Okay. Then I'm going to fold the Entredeux back. The seam allowance of the Entredeux back out of the way. See, that's what it looks like when you stitch it on. Then I'm going to fold it back, and then I'm going to zigzag it. Tiny little zigzag that just goes over to hold it. Okay, here we go. And that holds that seam allowance back, and then after I finish the zigzagging, which I'm doing now, after I finish the zigzagging, then I will go back in and trim the excess, and that is called extra stable lace finish. After I finish it, it will look like this. In other words, I've stitched down on the Entredeux edge, I folded it back, I zigzagged it, and then I will go back in and trim. Now, won't you come along with me to my attic? To go along with our French sewing on a budget idea, I selected a very simple antique christening dress. This dress I call the T-front christening dress. Can you see it actually looks like a T? There's the top part of the T, and then there's the next part. It has magnificent hand embroidery, just one piece of French lace that comes down the front, and these beautiful folded tucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 folded tucks out under the arm, and this beautiful embroidery that comes down, and then it skips a little space, and then more beautiful embroidery comes down and across the bottom of the T. The hem is very simple also. The hem is folded over and stitched down using a very beautiful but very simple hand feather stitch. We have a really wonderful letter today from our Sewing from the Heart. It comes from Heidi Nichols of the Rose Trellis Smockers in Portland, Oregon. Dear Martha, in 1985, members of Rose Trellis Smockers initiated a community service project designed to help ease and the grief of families who have suffered the loss of an infant before, during, or shortly after birth. Members of the Guild stitched bishop-style gowns in 5 different sizes for infants ranging from less than a pound to over 7 pounds. These gowns are given to the neonatal intensive care unit and labor and delivery unit of a local hospital which serves high-risk mothers and their babies. The gowns enable the nursing staff to dress the infant before the family holds him or her to say their final goodbyes. Parents may keep the gown or return it to the nursing staff to be washed and used for another family. Many parents choose to bury their child in one of these lovingly stitched gowns or keep it as a remembrance of their child. Since 1985, Rose Trellis members have made hundreds of these gowns, and the project has spilled to other guilds throughout the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. Groups interested in obtaining the pattern should send a self-addressed, stamped, business-size envelope with their written request to Rose Trellis Smockers, Heidi Nichols, 6044 Southeast Reed, R-E-E-D, College Place, Portland, Oregon, 97202. And they're happy to share their pattern with you. Thank you for joining me in my sewing room today, and I'd certainly like for you to come back next time.